Hello, I'm Dan Plashkes, and I'm CEO of S&P Data Digital, but I'm also chairperson and very proud of OwnersBox fantasy sports platform, which is the reason we're gathered here today. I have with us two of the three co-founders, Sandy Plashkes and Brian Kipp, the CEO. Really, the purpose of today's discussion, and I'm excited about it, is really to take an unusual format. We believe that, having a lot of experience at raising venture capital, this is such a new area that, fantasy sports and gaming and sportsbook has got a lot of attention, but more from the SPACs and the public markets. There's not a lot of venture firms that have wrapped their mind around this, I think, once in a lifetime opportunity. So we'd like to get the word out about what we do. And then secondly, if there's any people that are watching that happen to like to play fantasy sports, if we can pick up some customers, that would be great. But we're really here to talk about OwnersBox. And so, I'd like to turn it over first to Brian Kipp. I call Brian Kipp really a expert, very deep expertise in the space. He's dedicated, as sort of a side gig this for 10 years. He was on the forefront of the industry and has really taken that expertise and bottled it into this platform. So Brian, you had a vision and, you knew what was out there. Tell us about what makes OwnersBox unique.
Sure. Thanks a lot for that intro, Dan. OwnersBox is unique because we're approaching the paid fantasy space with a slightly different angle. The product that we've produced is called Weekly Fantasy Sports, and it has been designed to fill the gap between daily and season long. So very, very simply, daily gives you the impulse, more like individual sports betting type feel where you're playing within the course of a single day. And then season long, obviously, is that really engaged over the duration of an entire season where users, are making lineup changes very frequently. So what we've done with Weekly is kind of combine the two, get the impulse paid nature of the daily product and the engagement level of the season long, and we've merged them into one to give that user a new experience. The overall goal here is to create a new segment in the paid fantasy space.
Yeah, so just to chime in there, for us, we saw an opportunity or a real unmet gap in the market with Weekly, right? And obviously we're talking NFL season right now, and that's where we're getting a lot of customers at the moment. But with our NFL product, it's unique as well. We're an all offensive format, and we're always looking at ways to innovate in the space because we believe there's still lots of innovation to be had, even though daily's been around for quite a while here, and that's why we've taken this unique angle on the space when other companies, bigger companies in the space, are focusing on the sportsbook aspect. So we definitely see some room for innovation going forward here.
Right. What's really impressed me is the as we really launched in week one. We were ready, and you had this platform which is tried and true. Brian, let's focus on some of the uniqueness. I think that there's been a lot of transactions in this space, and by no means is this space. I think it's in its infancy, and I think even with all the acquisitions, there's so many people or players anticipating gaming and online betting taking off, and it's in the very early innings. There's going to be more and more players and more people look for. We're going to talk about the relationship between fantasy and gambling after, but talk about your platform, because as a lot of the people have sort of set up a cottage industry. It's like Amazon with the main couple players in terms of being props, but we've really built a platform, right? And that platform has a lot of different attributes in it. So talk about maybe the attributes of the platform, and Sandy, maybe you can also help us, in how it fits into the creating a better user experience as well. So talk about the technical UI and what you like, and then maybe some of the user experience differences.
Sure. Yeah. The OwnersBox platform did not spring up overnight. The foundations of it have been built over the course of a decade, and really only recently, circa 2019, did we really pivot to create high revenue generating products such as a paid fantasy sports product on top of the platform that we created. And over the course of that decade, we were in the marketplace. The product is very capable of handling incoming feeds, processing it, distributing it to end user clients very efficiently. We have a client layer that's very powerful that we've proven with the previous product. So this wasn't our first kick at the can in terms of, producing a product on this platform. In terms of very specific attributes, come down from the parsing of the live statistics to the delivery of that, all the way up to the compliance, know your customer requirements, especially in a highly regulated space like paid fantasy, payment processing, the user experience from user account creation and those associated journeys. So everything involved with the underlying and back office processes of operating a very high level paid fantasy product has been incorporated. And it's completely proprietary. Everything that we do has been developed in-house and is self-contained within the platform. So built into that is the flexibility for us to produce, multiple products on top of that engine. And, aside from WFS, which is our pilot product here, we have the capabilities of so much more already within the confines of the platform.
Yeah, and one thing just to add there is you see a lot of, social engagement, it's a big word with our, products in our industry especially, right? How do you engage these customers? How do you engage these fans, beyond just watching the game on TV? And you're seeing a lot of that, through sportsbook, advertising, through, showing live lines on screen and stuff like that. But with fantasy, it's been around for a while, but there's still a ton of innovation to be had on the social side. And that's definitely where our focus is and will be going forward. I think within the weekly structure, right? Think of daily, it's one day you basically place your lineup and then, it's over at the end of the day. So there's not a ton of opportunity for that social engagement where, with OwnersBox over the course of 7 days, we can engage our customer, past just the selection of their team or the live draft aspect of that. So that's, again, where our focus is and where we have a lot of ability to really create lots of cool, innovative things on the platform itself here.
Yeah, I think you've done a really great job. As your generation, I was talking to you yesterday about Discord. Your generation, the target market, I always call it, 15 to 30, and then there's a huge gap after that. Even 28 years old is the Snapchat generation, and there's always something that you're developing, and that you've done a really good job of giving your feedback into the product to really capture that. And the audience that they like to talk. You have people that you play games with you've never met. And I think that the world's feeding off this, and it's a great way. I was listening to the CEO of Discord talk about, people are saying don't play video games, but he learned how to be an engineer and he learned teamwork because he met players and you play a team and you compete. I think your products, your platform's done a great job on that. So I want to just turn the topic around a bit now and talk about, so what's some of the feedback that you've got, guys? So we've been out there now a couple of weeks. We obviously have limited budgets, but talk to us about some of the feedback that we've received.
Yes, I'll talk about the direct feedback, and maybe Sandy can talk a bit about the social feedback. But releasing a product is very important to get truly honest feedback from the user base. And rolling out a new product, when you do it, especially for the first week of NFL, your primary objective is to prove that the technology stands up, right? Because the demands on the technology is very high, especially in a highly consumed product like fantasy sports, and specifically for football. So we were very fortunate that technically the platform stood up to the loads that it had during the first week, and on top of that, of course, is the user experience. So the big players in the space have been around for a while now, and they've given the user an expectation of what the experience should look like and how it should behave. And so what we did, rather than guess, was to actually formulate a very short survey for our users, and we sent out 5,000 users a survey, and we digested the responses within 24 hours, and the overwhelmingly positive experience and feedback through that channel. 85% said they liked it or loved it, and 96% said they'd be sticking around for week 2. So that was very good direct feedback from the users. We did also ask them to be critical, and they did provide some, pretty poignant feedback on some of the improvements that we could do, but none of them were detrimental to the overall viability of the product. So very, very good feedback through that channel, and we're going to continue to solicit feedback that way.
Yeah, and just to add from the social side, and I think that's one aspect where, we've done a really good job with our content team in-house. We've believed in that vision from day one is, with a new product in the space, we've always created content around it, wanted to educate about it, because that's another essential piece of being a new platform with a completely different product, right? So that's where our focus has been. And, one of the cool aspects through, the first few weeks of NFL here is we've been able to engage with so many more people, spread the, awareness around OwnersBox in general through Twitter, through Discord, which you mentioned earlier. Big channel for us. We've been building our community through our YouTube there as well. And a lot of feedback on Twitter. I think Twitter's a great spot for fantasy sports and, fantasy players in general. And we've seen people tweeting at us their lineups, saying how much they love the product, DMing us feedback. Like, the feedback's been great and it's completely unsolicited. And I think that's been one of the most enjoyable things for me as a more of a boots on the ground social media. I'm always on it, always checking stuff. And it's been great to see our partners, Rotoball or RotoWire, Fantasy Pros, some of the top, industry experts looking at our platform and saying, hey, this is a player, this is a player in the space. And, we love what you guys have created here with NFL. And it's been also great to see general players, unsolicited, just tweeting at us, shouting us out and stuff like that. So it's been great. It's only been, 3 weeks since we really showed it to the world. But in those 3 weeks, it's been, overwhelmingly positive, as Brian said.
And it's been positive feedback from a spectrum of users, from the sharps all the way down to the first-time players, which is, a really good testament to the composition of the product and how it's playing in the space. So we're very happy with the initial feedback.
Great. So now looking at it from the investment thesis, and we really want to. We are looking for capital. We don't think you need a ton of capital to really be successful. We've shown that very early on, but we are looking for capital for marketing, right? And so a lot of people have come by. A lot of different companies have approached you in the sports and in the gaming and sportsbook industries. Obviously, and some of the questions that we've been getting is, what's the correlation between fantasy sports and sports book? And so, obviously, there's a great one of my old investors sent me. He went to school with the guy that wrote Freakonomics. There's an incredible podcast on the skill behind fantasy. And I don't think that, I think that's something we all like, especially when your week long plays very well against the year long. The week plays very well against the year long, which, if you lose a player, you're done and you lose interest. But talk to us about sort of how you sort of think of the fantasy prospect. If someone just gets an online gaming sportsbook license, what's the benefit to them of partnering with OwnersBox?
So it's definitely that coveted user base, right? So, very recently there's been the forming of the verticals in the North American gaming space. And the four primary categories there are, sportsbook, paid fantasy, iGaming, and content. And they're really going after a heavily overlapped user base. And whenever you can get into a situation like that, it makes perfect sense to start building your verticals so that you're not independently marketing to the same users over and over again. You're keeping them within your ecosystem. And the studies since sports betting became legal in 2018 is that 61% of users overlap between fantasy sports and sportsbook. And that's evolving. That number's evolving, and I would assess that it will be increasing, just because of the availability of sportsbook is growing in various jurisdictions, and that market's just going to grow year over year. So it really is. The fantasy sports user is the primary conduit which DraftKings and FanDuel used to build out their sportsbook business. That was their original thesis going into it. It made perfect sense logically, and I think if you look back on it, they were highly successful in that regard. Is really pipelining that original core, sticky, paid fantasy user base into their sportsbook products.
Yeah, just to add there, let me just go real quick because I know this is a great piece of what we have to offer here, and the content aspect. It really contributes, as I said earlier, to our fantasy platform, and that's you've seen the biggest companies in our space, even of all sizes, really going after and acquiring these content companies, right? Who are creating content around sportsbook, around fantasy sports. You see it everywhere, and I think that's going to only increase through the end of 2021 and into 2022 as well, where you're going to see live odds on the NFL games on the weekend. You're going to see it on golf. You've already seen kind of an example of that, with the match that Phil and Tiger did, all that kind of cool stuff. So you're seeing a lot of innovation on the content side as well. And that's, one of the, visions we've always had is to build a multifaceted business with our product, with our offerings on the, the paid fantasy side. And then obviously the content aspect, which we've built from the ground up from day one. So it's definitely a good, dual offering here.
Yeah, I think that's great. By the way, the other thing that I would like you to address is what is the quality? As you know, what is the quality of person that's a fantasy player in terms of, so they're acquiring, is it a higher quality person or is it too early to really comment? Do you have any feeling on, what's the quality of the fantasy customer that now becomes, a sportsbook person?
Yeah, I don't think I'd use the word quality. I think I'd use the term loyal.
Loyal. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's a great term.
I think that can be reflected better in the fantasy sports products, just because once you get into the single betting area, unless you're doing something very innovative, a number of books can, offer the same contest, and then the user's likely migrating to whoever's giving them best odds or making things as efficient as they can be for the user. So really it goes back to that initial foundation category in which the user is within the vertical, which is paid fantasy sports, is going to be the stickiest, and we like to look at them as being the most loyal. So if the strategy is for any sportsbook company, offering or incorporating a fantasy product into their ecosystem, the loyalty is likely going to come very strongly through the fantasy channel.
So we've talked a lot about investment today, obviously the sports book, but with you and I and Sandy, we spent a lot of time thinking who would be the ideal investor in something like this. Number one, it's legal in states which aren't allowed: California, Texas, Florida. So it's a great, it's a great lead position. So, and our feeling has always been that, someone that owns a sports team would be in a great example, because right now, a lot of sports owners are big investors, as you know. But, if we really believe we can get, that we could get some, to get 1 million customers is not crazy, right, Brian? It's not a huge, it's a segment of this business. There's about 60 million players, correct me if I'm wrong. So, we really believe sports people would benefit from it, people that own sports franchises. And maybe, right now they're promoting one of two players. They've got to deal with it, but they're not getting any upside equity. So, I just wanted to make sure that from an investment perspective, we really have always said we want to grow this business. There'll always be, sports books coming after a group that's created critical mass, but the value of a player is going up and up, and we really want to build and get critical mass. And we really have shown very early on, right, that you can do this. So, any closing words from either one of you in terms of, what makes OwnersBox super attractive?
Yeah, I think, we wouldn't discriminate against any type of investor. There's obviously strategic investors at this point in time, those already involved in the gaming space. It's an obvious move for them. And then, of course, anyone who's looking for entering a company at our stage, which is relatively early, could see significant upside in their investment in a very hot space. I think we have the tools, we have the resources, we have the team. Really, with a moderate initial raise, we can propel this thing to a significant multiple within a very short period of time. So there's definitely upside with the stage that we're at. And remember, the products that we have right now aren't competing directly with the big dogs in the space. So, you've got your total addressable market, around $60 million age of majority players. divided between the two spectrums, daily and season long. And what our product does is really looking to appeal to both of those audiences. So when you talk about a potential niche, to create a small segment of those users is great, but we think the product really appeals to both audiences. So your sizable upside, the conditions are there for us to be able to meet that.
That's a great conclusion, Brian. And one of the things I think you guys got going for you is, the world is short on talent. It's just the way it is. We know that in my industry. Everyone's looking for people. It's really hard. But in your field, the kids are graduating school. They don't want to be investment bankers. I mean that with the greatest respect. Your ability to attract great technical talent, especially where you are, is a competitive advantage. I think that you guys are really able and have, what's behind OwnersBox is, 45 to 50 of the most talented people. And I really take my hat off. It's a great time to be in the space. And I think that we'd welcome anyone taking a deeper dive into the company, right?
For sure. And the makeup of that 48 employees that we have is across all departments. We have a strong development team, strong processes in place that have a proven track record of executing. We have our proprietary operations teams, game ops team, status updating team. We have full customer service under here, recently full marketing team. We're building all of that out internally to support our proprietary offerings. And then, of course, from Sandy's side, the content team that's really getting us visually out there with a lot of grade A content from the content side.
Yeah, great. So in wrap up, thank you for your time. I hope everyone has a listen, and if you have any questions, we'll tell you how we can get a hold of us. But really excited about this future, and it's really bright. It's an incredible space, and it's moving as fast as any industry in the world. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Dan.